On your expedition, on the way up looking for the magnolias, you come across tons of rhododendrons flowering in buckets. On some of the blossoms, the flowers have faded, but you can see that the little rhododendron fruits are starting to form. You take note of this location so you can come back later, collect the small and fine rhododendron seeds for propagation. Ernest Wilson was sent to China to find this tree behind me. This is the dove tree. And along with the dove tree, he came back with seeds of a number of other plants that are important to us in horticulture today, namely the magnolias and a number of rhododendron species. So thank you, Ernest Wilson. If you're going to become a plant explorer and grower of magnolias, following in the footsteps whether of Joseph Banks or Sir Joseph Hooker back in the 1800s, or in the footsteps of French missionaries like Jean-Pierre Armand David, or later on George Forrest, it's essential that you get to know the geography of a place. So China, a big old country like this, up here is going towards the Korean peninsula out into Japan, winding all through here, through the Pacific Ocean, all along here. Going south there, you go into Southeast Asia, and Vietnam and Laos, and a little strip of land takes you through Thailand all the way down to Malaysia. There's some mountains that go off into the Himalayas, going off into India and Sikkim and Bhutan. The neat thing about China is all the provinces are laid out more or less in a geographic manner. If you get caught up by the English of these weird words like Gansu or Guizhou or Guangxi, you're like, what are these people talking about? But if you have an understanding of geography, it clarifies and simplifies things. The most important thing you got to know is the four directions. In this case, Dong, Nan, Xi, Bei. So you got China, you got two major rivers running through it. One, the Yellow River, and one, the Long River. So over here you got this long river, and there's a big old lake in there. So you got Lake North, Hubei. And you got Lake South, Hunan. And then you got a River West province right here, Jiangxi. And up here by this other river, same sort of deal. You got North River, you got south of the river provinces. You got east of the mountains, west of the mountains. Here's Mountain Pass, West province. Up here there's a confluence where the rivers come together. That's Sichuan, Sichuan, or it's just four rivers. And up where all the rivers come out from, this big huge up mountains and plateaus, that's the Green Sea. That's the Qinghai. In terms of the source of all the rivers and life, that's what it is. And if you get the chance to go to more jungly conditions, or the monsoon sweep on through, or some good old magnolias, well, that's the Cloud South, the province of the Cloud South. That would be Yunnan. The magnolia is a tree that likes it wet and moist and deep soils. This beautiful magnolia behind me is a hybrid. One of them crosses. It's a Magnolia soulangiana. It's got two parents. One of them, the mama, is that beautiful one with the white flowers called the Woodland Magnolia, Magnolia denudata. And then the papa, the sperm contribution, the pollen contribution from the papa, that one's another magnolia called Magnolia liliflora. But it's got evidence of its parentage, both the white of the denudata as well as the pink of the liliflora. So it's a combo. Notice where the flowers and the inflorescence are born. They're at the end, at the terminal tips. So these are the female reproductive structures, what they call gynecium. So woman parts that are all starting to swell up. You can see the tiny little stars at the base where the stamens were. That's where the male parts were. And these things spiraling all the way up, these carpels. If it got pollinated and fertilized, then these will start to swell up into little fruits. We'll see what happens. When you get to making friends with this whole group, the magnolias, another useful trait to look at is whether the flower itself is covered in a little hairy covering. So this is a little bit past on this one, but let's see if I can still get a hold of it. Well, there it is. See that little nice furry covering? Per rule. Magnolias, they don't got what we call petals and sepals, those parts that are underlying it. All kind of variations or derivations of leaves. They got these things, ancient thing called tepals. That's what the beetles chew through in order to get at that sweet nectar or those later on the pollen. As you're growing magnolias and trying to mimic their natural growing conditions as best as possible, you want to learn about the deciduous woodlands from which they come from. In a deciduous woodland, the summer times are hot and humid, and there's abundant water. So there, as you're hiking up the mountains and hills and valleys looking for the magnolias, for sure you'll come across a number of other plant species that you want to take note of. Down by the streams and waters, you might come across begonias, jack-in-the-pulpits, dogwoods, and also columbines. The soil that you'll be walking on will be deep and rich, composed of millions of years of leaves and bark, all falling to the ground and composting, getting eaten by earthworms. Across patches on the hillside, there'll be numbers of different shrubs, whether fragrant shrubs like the daphne, or pokier things like barberries and osmanthus. For sure, you're likely to come across some huckleberries and vacciniums too, some blueberries. In a shady patch, you might come across some primulas and some violas. And all through the mountains there, you might find gathered all kinds of rhododendrons. Other trees you might encounter as you're searching for the magnolia might include birches and maples. And for sure, you're going to see some oaks and patches of conifers here and there, whether it be a hemlock or a picea, a spruce, or some abies, some firs. And hopefully at the end of your journey, or maybe at the beginning, you'll come across some nice specimens of magnolias. Imagine you went on a 2-month-long expedition with 30 Chinese porters, and you got your plant presses, you got your seed collection envelopes, and you're hiking up 8,000, 9,000, 9,000, 10,000, 12,000 feet. You're in this jungle full of rhododendrons, and it's wet and it's moist, but the sun's booming out, and you come upon this tree, Magnolia campbelli, way high up. Once in a while, if you got planted here in your garden, Magnolia from the Himalayas, and you got something from the Americas, maybe Magnolia acuminata or virginiana, beetles don't discriminate, and they might pollinate, fertilize one another, and then boom, if you see a seedling come up and you're guarded, you're cautious, you're observant, then you grow that one up. Well, then you would have a natural hybrid. In other cases, us as propagators, it's fun to mix and match and see what happens, since we're bringing nature all together. When we're doing propagation, we like to do all the methods. We like to collect the seeds and grow them from that. It's nice to take cuttings too, then you have a perfect clone of the plant. In other cases, in the old times, they would set up scaffolding all around a big old tree so they could bend the rims down into dirt-filled, soil-filled tubs and then do some layering. So after Ernest Wilson had brought back Magnolia campbelli with this upright form, large, huge, cup and saucer-like flowers, and on the other hand, they have Magnolia denudata, which had been cultivated in China back in the 600 AD or something. It's like their main temple, main palace, street flower is like the #1 flower. People are like, hey, what would happen if we mixed and matched those two? So in order to do so, the magnolia flowers, they will mature at different times in terms of the male and the female parts. The females mature earlier, and then it's the males. And so the beetles, they come in and they're chewing on all that pollen of that open flower. They get the pollen all over their bodies. And then they go to another flower which is still in bud, is still closed. But the females are in there, they're ready. So the beetle goes, chews through all those tepals, and then spreads all that pollen all around. And so if you're a good attentive plant person into the flowers, you watch it go ahead and open. Later you collect those seeds and you grow them up. And some of them will take on the best traits, the best qualities of both their parents. In this case, though, with two great parents there, they came up with this hybrid called Magnolia X Hybrid Veitchii. And what this particular magnolia has is a nice upright habit from the campbelli, but it seems to bloom a lot longer than either of the parents, with big old flowers. And another good part about it is that it seems to bloom a lot earlier when grown from seed. Here she is. Since magnolias are mostly the flowers we call hermaphroditic, they got both male and female parts. When you're sitting in a little train station, bus depot in China or in Taiwan, Off by the side, oftentimes there'll be a little old lady or a little old man with a bamboo tray sitting on all these tiny little blossoms, a little magnolia, Magnolia champaca. And like a lot of places, whether you like frankincense or myrrh, or you like Palo Santo, or you like copal, it seems like the fragrance of plants and flowers and resins seems to bring humans to another state. Usually hopefully a kind of a divine and spiritual state. Too bad I can't waft some fragrance through you through this video, but if you could be here to smell it, wow, this sounds really good stuff. The evergreen southern magnolia, one of our most beloved street trees, lining up all the parks. Aside from the southern magnolia, Magnolia grandiflora, there's a number of other magnolias from the southern and eastern United States that are great for ornamentals. The wood makes good carving, good lumber, good cabinets, and they're very useful. Beautiful trees. Always in wet, moist woodlands. This is another one. This is Magnolia macrophylla, a deciduous magnolia. So in the whole Magnoliaceae family, they've split them out generally into two groups. One being the Magnolias, the others are tulip trees. The tulip trees are easy to tell because their leaves are lobed and their fruits are long, kind of like what they're calling it as a samara. It's like a little dry wing, but more like a linden, not so much like a maple where it's got the two wings. And that's indehiscent. That's to say it doesn't open by itself along a line or a suture. And lastly, their fruits themselves are dry. Unlike the magnolia, where they have this seed coat that's fleshy. The testa is a little bit fleshy, usually bright red or orange. There were two trees of the Chinese tulip tree, Liriodendron chinense, in the whole of Golden Gate Park. We just cut down one of them, the other one's over there. So we'll take a look at both of them. This one was a youngin', but it had some potential. This here's the other tulip, Chinese tulip tree, starting to leaf out a little bit. Unpruned, natural form, beautiful form. A little bit windswept from the westerlies. The leaves of the tulip tree. Oh, so distinctive with its lobes. We're sitting here by a little old Japanese friend of mine named the Star Magnolia, Magnolia stellata, because we want to show you how to make some cuttings. In case you wanted to make some clones, you want to grow up some plants real fast. So if you read a lot of these old-time books that come out from the East Coast, it's real distinct in terms of the stages of growth of a plant. That's to say, in the early springtime, the wood starts to grow out. It's soft wood, and then as it progresses over the summer, it gets a little bit hardened, lignified, so to speak. And then towards the fall, it starts to go into dormancy as it gets ready to, maybe if it's deciduous, drop its leaves and go on into winter time, where it just stays real quiet and dormant. Out here, this is San Francisco, but we're all mixed up with regard to the seasons. Our summers are so cold. You could be driving up 10 miles north, 10 miles east, 10 miles south, and they got bright sunshine as hot as can be. But San Francisco, because the little peninsula surrounded by water and bay and ocean, Pacific Ocean on all sides, it's just darn cold. All that fog comes in, and just like chattering and shivering all summer. And so the plants, they don't know quite which way to go. By that time they think maybe we're going into winter, and they're kind of hunkered down a little bit with their full leaves on, not sure what to do with it. But then comes the fall, and so if you want to see San Francisco at one of its most beautiful times, come in the fall, because then it's blue skies. Sometimes we get little warm offshore winds that come from inland, from the valleys. The plants are thinking, hey, maybe it's springtime again, and they start blooming again in the fall. And they'll do this throughout the year, so they'll bloom sometimes 2 times a year. Once in a while they're feeling energetic and everything's all hunky-dory, they'll go ahead and bloom 3 times a year. So this does change the status of the cuttings, where it's not very clear. Where's the ripe wood? Where's the semi-ripe? Where's the softwood? Where's the hardwood? So we're going to do something here really West Coast that was taught to me by my old teacher and boss, Dr. Don Mahoney. So this is a pretty easy trick, real commonsensical trick actually. You just take your plant piece that you think you're going to make your cutting out of, and you just bend it. And boom, just like that. Where it broke, that's a good cutting right there. Thank you for watching. Enjoy your plants.